All right, good evening. It's 7:03. We're going to call this meeting of the Drainage Board for Thursday, September 3rd to order. First off, we'll just introduce the committee and everybody that's here. So I'm Councillor Andrew Vail, the chair. We've got Councillor Ron Ashmore, committee member Mike Verbeck, Charles Clark, Drainage Superintendent Lucas Feitler, Engineering Mike Farquhar, Deputy Clerk, and our Recording Secretary Joel Watts. So at this time, I would ask for an adoption of the agenda. Ron, is there a seconder? Mike, all in favor? Carries, thank you. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move to 2.3, the adoption of the previous minutes. Moved by Councillor Ashmore, seconded by Mike. Any discussion? Ron?
Just a question, Mr. Chair, on 5.3, it mentioned that the chair would contact Director of Public Works to provide information about roadside ditching and its relationship to drainage to the Drainage Board. Staff responded to questions from the members of the board. I was just wondering, Mr. Chair, if you had a chance to do that.
So Public Works will be attending a future Drainage Board meeting to make that discussion.
Okay, so you reached out to them then?
Yep.
Okay. The details of that?
There are no details, right? They're going to come to a Drainage Board meeting to discuss exactly that, right? There's no individual things that are going to be discussed. It's a broad view of the relationship between this committee and Public Works when it comes to municipal ditches and municipal drains. Charles?
Well, that's fine. Sorry. Well, that's fine, but I mean, the question be here, how long is that going to take? Because
This isn't about separate issues, right? So we can have a discussion afterwards. We had a discussion earlier about the ditch issue that's going on, so we can let you go ahead, right? But this board has very prescribed, provincially prescribed mandates, right? So for us to discuss stuff and make decisions, it has to be brought forward as a petition for a drain or a mutual agreement for a drain. Right? Now, there has been a conversation, and we can have that discussion or whatever. Lucas has been out and looked at the specific ditch, and there is a plan for something to happen there, but that is outside of the Drainage Board's mandate, because it is a Public Works issue. It's not a municipal drain. It's not a mutual agreement, unless the owner wants to enter into that, and then it's in our wheelhouse.
okay, I understand.
Okay? Ron?
If I could just ask a question through you to Lucas, how does this work with the landowner there? Like you met him, I met him, and there is an interrelationship between Public Works and Engineering out there on Post Road where the issue is, and the whole idea of the last meeting was to get communication between Public Works and Engineering to flow together. If you could just sort of enlighten us there as to how we could maybe do that.
Okay, we can have that discussion later, but like I said, we did have that discussion, and there has been communication on this issue between Engineering and Public Works. Okay, so is there any other discussion with regards to the previous minutes? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. So that brings us down to 2.3.1, or sorry, we're down to 3 deputations, which I believe there are none, correct, Joel?
That's correct.
So new business, 4.1, the memorandum, request for drain improvement, section 78, Hugh Davidson Municipal Drain. Lucas, all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is in regards to the Hugh Davidson Municipal Drain, which is on the screen up there, and you have the drawing in front of you. So a little bit of background. During last year's inspections, I walked the Hugh Davidson Drain, and I noticed that fill had been brought in and placed beside the open section. I contacted the landowner, Ed Bagshaw, who told me that he wanted to enclose this open drain on his property. I told him that it was a municipal drain and that this request would have to come under the procedures of the Drainage Act. I explained that in the past, enclosing municipal drains have not been approved by our local conservation authorities. Since then, Ed Bagshaw has met with the aquatic biologist from Kawartha Conservation. He's went out and looked at the site and confirmed that he will issue a permit for this enclosure. I contacted Kawartha Conservation myself and confirmed the same. So after that, Ed Bagshaw submitted a notice of request for drain improvement under section 78 on August 18th to the city clerk's office, and the Drainage Act requires that we respond to this within 30 days. So unlike a section 4 petition, proceeding with the 78 improvement to the drain is entirely at the discretion of council, and in Kawartha Lakes, the Drainage Board. So this specific request is made to improve the effectiveness of a single landowner's use of drain. However, the drain has largely been unmaintained and unmonitored for the past 40 years. So engineering recommends proceeding with a new report to address the following additional concerns. So if you follow along with this map here in front of you, so the drain is not as per design anymore. The Taylor Road crossing has been altered, a catch basin installed, and the sea fire land has been enclosed. So the road that you see heading north-south is Taylor's Road. The east-west road is Highway 7, just to put that into context. So it's unknown if this enclosure is sized correctly. No records exist of this work being completed, and it's unknown if it was approved by the drainage superintendent at the time. The scope and cost of work to get the drain back to its original condition, as per the latest engineer's report, would be quite large. And further to that point, if there's a problem on a section that has been changed from the original report, how can the municipality maintain it? All we can do is bring it back to the original report, which means that closed sections needs to be changed back to an open section, which would be also quite costly. And would probably, and the farmer would probably not appreciate that. So another reason is the infrastructure on Highway 7 likely does not meet current MTO standard. It's just a CSP pipe stood upright with a couple pieces of rebar to keep anything from falling in. Additional land has been brought into the drain through tiling. The extent is currently unknown, but new outlets are visible. There's significant erosion, vegetation, and fallen trees in the brush area, so a clean out is required regardless of any improvement. So section 78 states that if the council, and in our case the drainage board, of the municipality that is responsible for maintaining and repairing the drainage works considers it appropriate to undertake one or more of the projects listed in subsection 1.1 for the better use, maintenance, or repair, emphasis added, of the drainage works, or of lands or roads, the municipality may undertake and complete the project in accordance with the report of an engineer appointed by it. So for those reasons, engineering recommends proceeding with a new engineer's report. You do have a couple of alternatives. One would be to do nothing. An improvement to the drain is entirely at the discretion of council. However, you would have to have a reasonable reason why. Another option is to initiate procedures to abandon the drain, so we don't have to maintain a drain that does not match the original report. So our recommendation is on the first page, and I leave it with you.
All right, thanks, Lucas. Is there any questions of Lucas? Charlie?
I guess I'm kind of lost here. But, so you're saying there's been a bunch of tiling done into this drain that we didn't know it was done, correct?
Well, this drain was constructed in '77, so over the years, people have tiled outside the watershed and brought it in.
So those landowners were never charged for tiling into this municipal, or hitching into this municipal drain?
Correct, and possibly the pipe isn't sized correctly if additional land has been brought in.
So by us tonight, if we decide to allow Ed to do this improvement, or do what he wants to do, what's gonna happen?
It's gonna be a new report, and it's gonna include all the changes that has happened to this drain over the years. And it's gonna make sure that those changes aren't affecting the hydrology of the drain itself. Because right now, we don't know. Somebody has, without approval, without records, enclosed the section of the drain.
So on what property is that on?
The Seafire lands, so it's right at the southwest corner of the two roads, Highway 7 and Taylor's Road.
So who owns that now?
I'm not sure.
CFAR, well, that would be, Andrew?
I think on the corner there, I think, doesn't Bruce MacArthur own that farm now?
That's where the
They've
pumpkin
taken,
state.
they've taken a couple of houses off the southwest corner or whatever, but I believe it's MacArthur's that own the farm behind there now.
So, do we not have to find out who done this work and when?
How?
By the landowner.
And so we can go and ask them and then find out how it all went about, but there's no engineer's report. So if any issue happened on that land, all the city can do to maintain it is to bring it back to this report, which means we have to bring it back to an open ditch. So if there's any blowout in that tile on that property, and we're responsible to repair it, we have to dig it all back up, because we have to follow that report.
So I think for clarification, right, so the recommendation that you're making, that's up to the drainage board tonight to make a decision is that we go ahead with the request for improvement to the drain, which then means the engagement of an engineer to come out and look at the whole drain and then bring a report back to this body saying, you know, maintenance needs to be done on this section needs to be reconstructed, and the costs are going to be this, and then I guess it will be up to the board and Mr. Bagshaw at that point whether we push forward with anything. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Oh, I want to just clear something. My young lad, or not, that lives with me, works for Ed Bagshaw. So would I be counted as in a conflict of interest? I'm asking through you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't believe that's considered a pecuniary interest, is it, Joel? It's not a direct financial gain.
Under the municipal conflict of interest rules, it is up to the individual member to decide if they feel that they have a conflict of interest or not. If they are seeking advice, any member of any municipal board or council can reach out to the Integrity Commissioner to ask for their advice. Otherwise, it's up to you.
So do you want to declare a conflict, or you're all right, Charlie? Okay. Okay. So is there any other questions about what's Ron?
Through you, just a question to Lucas. The drain itself, is it a grass waterway, or is there a tile underneath it, or how big is the tile? How many inch tile is it that's going through the property?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I believe as it, on the right side of Taylor's Road, it is, I believe, a 14-inch. On the left side of Taylor's Road, I believe it is a 14-inch. However, I'd have to hop into that catch basin and measure it, which I wasn't prepared to do. And so just by, through experience, it's a 14-inch on the right side of Taylor's Road. There's a catch basin on Taylor's Road accepting all of the water from the roadside ditch. Therefore, that pipe on the left side, on the west side, should be bigger. It shouldn't be the same size because it's taking on additional water. So we need an engineer to kind of do the hydrology, let us know, is it acceptable, does it meet standards?
Okay, Mike?
I'm just curious, so where Bagshaw wants to cover the ditch in, is that where you had the mouse right there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes,
From
that's,
right there.
that's correct.
But it's
Not the entire length, just to the cedar forest. Just to
Yeah.
his property line to the cedar
Right there,
forest.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the whole issue right now is what size of pipe to put in?
That's one of the issues. I listed the issues there over the drain in background. One of the issues is that we don't know if that pipe is sized correctly. It wasn't engineered.
But there's no pipe right there right now, though.
Correct.
So you're concerned about the rest of the pipe to the east of where the open ditch is currently?
Yeah. That is a concern. And not only is it a concern with hydrology, it's a concern if anything happens, if we need to repair it. Because we have to follow the original engineer's report that says that's an open ditch. So to repair it, we have to make that an open ditch or get a new report. Those are the two options, or abandon it.
So when you said abandoned earlier, what do you mean, like abandon the whole?
So,
Highway
city
7?
council can elect to abandon a drain through the procedures of the Drainage Act.
What's the maintenance schedule on drains to begin with?
Typically, we like to clean out a drain once in every 10 years.
Okay.
Seems to be a pretty good lifespan. That's kind of the program we're getting into now.
So, and you said earlier, nothing's been touched for 40 years.
That's correct.
So, is it written in stone that the city has to maintain every X amount of years? Or when a ditch is designed by the engineer, do they put in their report how often they feel that it's likely gonna need to be cleaned out?
Not in our drainage reports. The ones I've reviewed, I haven't seen.
No, not the drainage board, then with the engineer who creates the whole plan, do they not put on, because obviously, like, I have a lot of clay soils, and I'm fairly flat, but there could be a ditch in Bethany where it's sandy and hilly. Now, they're gonna have more erosion issues, so the clean out might have to be prescribed or more often than my clay soils.
For sure, I totally agree. It looks like,
So why wasn't this looked at for the last 40 years?
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Chair. Some reports the engineer can recommend based on soil type, a recommendation for timing of clean out. But like Lucas said, I've never seen one that we've had with that recommendation. We do try to have a proactive program, and over the last, I'd say 10 years, we've been proactive. However, we have, 167 kilometers worth of drains, so we're taking our time to get back through. I think, Lucas, you've walked through 90%, so an inventory and got an idea of what needs maintenance. So it's just, at this point, getting around to the maintenance. 40 years ago, 30 years ago, even 20 years ago, the prior amalgamation, the maintenance was the responsibility of municipalities, and some municipalities were more proactive in maintaining their drains than others.
and if I may add to you, Mr. Chair, landowners pay the cost for maintenance. So I'd like to talk to the landowners and make sure that they also want to clean out the drain, and it's not just me saying, you know what, it's been 10 years, we're cleaning it out. So we talk with the landowners as well.
Okay, any other questions? Charlie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Lucas, did you talk to this landowner that's filled in, where the drain's filled in now?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Mike?
So you said you haven't talked to the upstream landowners. would it not be beneficial to know if they're happy with the flow of that whole system? Just to start to go, well, was there an issue, or can this, where Bagshaw wants to put this in?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we received a petition from Mr. Bagshaw, so we have to start that process and act on that petition. We will be discussing with the other landowners as we move forward through this process. But based on, like Lucas has said, the request petition of Mr. Bagshaw is one issue. Now that Lucas has reviewed the whole drain, we have other issues that need to be dealt with. So regardless of the petition, if we had come through just through our general maintenance program and Lucas reviewed the drain, we'd probably be in this exact same position, but it would be the municipality petition for the 78 to deal with the issues that have happened over the years in the drain.
Go ahead, Charlie. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we go ahead with with this proposal that's been brought forward by Ed Bagshaw to petition to go ahead.
Okay, so there's a motion from Charlie as printed. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ashmore. Any further discussion?
We do need some clarity on the motion. There's a
you want me to read
section of the motion that requires an engineer.
Okay,
name.
so I'll just read the motion. So, motion by Charlie Clark, seconded by Councillor Ashmore, recommended that the memorandum from Drainage Superintendent, Engineering and Corporate Assets, Lucas Feitler, dated September 3rd, 2020, regarding the request for drain improvement for the Hugh Davidson Municipal Drain by owners Ed Bagshaw of Concession 8, Part Half, Lot 19, Geographic Township of Mariposa be received, that the city proceed with the request for drain improvements submitted by Ed Bagshaw for an improvement to the Hugh Davidson Municipal Drain, and the city clerk proceed by sending notices required under Section 5 and 78 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, Chapter D 17, that pursuant to Section 8.1 and 78.2 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, Chapter D 17, and subject to any objection from Kawartha Conservation, that an engineer be appointed as drainage engineer on a date 30 days from the notice to Kawartha Conservation for the examination of the drainage works, and to proceed with the requirements of the proposed improvement under Section 78 of the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, Chapter D 17. Any further discussion? Going to call the question. All in favor?
We still need clarity as to who is the engineer being appointed.
Okay. Mike?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Lucas had the opportunity to go from the city's roster of drainage engineers and ask for requests for quotes. So we received 4 or 3 quotes? 3 quotes, and the lowest quote right now is Michael Garrett's. I believe the firm's name is Garrett's Consulting. We've used Michael Garrett's. The last was the Webster Drain, was his report, and his quote is the lowest right now at this point.
Okay. So everybody, the mover and the seconder are right that M. Garrett's be appointed as the drainage super on this project? That's all good? That covers Joel? All right. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so that brings us to 5.1, other business, the discussion on roadside ditching relationship to municipal drainage. Mike Farquhar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So after our last meeting, Lucas had gone out and looked at the ditch in question at the location we had spoken about. He had performed a survey, created a profile and then provided me with that information. We reviewed it, and then I put a package together outlining the issues that was brought forward at the last Drainage Board meeting from the resident, and provided that information to Public Works. And I believe then they're looking at coming forward in the future to a future Drainage Board meeting to talk about their process for maintaining roadside ditches.
Yes, Councillor Ashmore.
Just a question to Mike there. Was there any specific talk about that location? Because the owner really isn't asking for a drain or to be signed on or do any type of drainage work like any drain in the property. It's just a matter of trying to get the communication between the two going.
So I think you had indicated earlier that from Lucas's site visit, the notes and the measurements and the documentation is all gone from engineering to Public Works, and you're going to follow up with the Director of Public Works as to what's going to be done about it. And I believe you were going to check Councillor Ashmore about whether there's been a case number submitted and forward that to Mike for follow up with Public Works.
Yeah, I'll do that, and if I could be kept in the loop, appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, absolutely. We provided a package showing what our opinion is of the situation, and if you know or have an idea of the case number or the request for maintenance, then that would be helpful information to provide on to Public Works.
Okay. If there's no further questions of Mike at this point, Charlie?
I'd just like to make a comment here. I think, you know, this whole situation we've got into out here in Post Road has been through the lack of A and B and C talking together, you know. And I think we're going to see more and more of this drainage issues are going to develop as that community grows out in east part of the city. You know, they're very active agricultural people. They're very active drainage people, as you probably know already. And I think, you know, moving forward, we want to get this meeting with Mr. Robinson and us as soon as possible. I mean, I think it's a key thing to have communication here and get this ball moving, that we know from our standpoint what's going on, from engineering and from Public Works and everybody. Because the last thing we need to do is have this community say, you know, we want to come to the city of Kawartha Lakes and set up and do more farming, but we're not going to go there because we can't get nothing accomplished to get our land drained, and we run into stops, you know. We want to encourage them to keep coming and expanding, and I think it's very important that we get this communication thing figured out sooner than later. Thank you.
Yep, and nobody disagrees, but what everybody has to remember, right, there's nothing from the city of Kawartha Lakes that's stopping anybody from draining their land, right? The Drainage Act is very prescribed for any landowner as to what they have to go through and what the process is, and it's the same for the municipality and this board, right? It's very prescribed as to what our role is and what the landowner's role is and what can be done and what can't be done, right? So what we have to remember is this discussion that's going to take place with Public Works is an information session, so everybody understands, you know, when the two connect, right? Like we said, the perfect example really is the Webster drain. It outlets into a municipal ditch and uses the municipal ditchway to access a culvert to get to the south side of the municipal drain that goes through Wetchell's, right? So for this board, any issues there, that is the conversation with Public Works and everything, right? We have to remember that this board's mandate is not to deal with, you know, Public Works issues and engineering issues with ditches and you know, in urban areas, runoff from, one neighbor to another neighbor up in Springdale Gardens or whatever, that's not the mandate of this committee, unfortunately, right? So, but no, they will be here and go through the relationship, and if there's anything that can be improved on between communications in that realm, we can deal with that, absolutely. Is there anything further this evening? Councillor Ashmore?
Yeah, I just echo what Charlie had said there. Like the Mennonite community, when they come from Wellington County or Waterloo County or West Grey or wherever they particularly came from, there they have an active relationship between Public Works and engineering, and they seem to be really synchronized. And I think that'd be great if we could have that here in our municipality, because we're going to get more and more of the community coming and more drainage, and we just need to improve our communication between Public Works and engineering. It'd be great.
Okay, Mike?
I got one question, kind of touching back on just an example of the Hugh Davidson drain. When you said that we don't know what's been added for tile drainage into this for the last X amount of years. So I know, like a farmer as myself, when I go through the tile loan program, I have to have the outlet approved, i.e. then the city knows exactly where it is and what the whole project's being done. If a farmer chooses to pay for the tile project in cash, do they have to have the outlet approved?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it depends on what outlet they're looking at. If it's a municipal drain, if it's a roadside ditch, then yes.
Okay, no, yeah, so if on their own property they have a natural fall near their outlet, and let's say the neighbors, it's the bush or whatever, the neighbor doesn't, because there are some land that's owned by City of Toronto people that don't go there, and they just dump water. Is there a way that we, or the city can, I don't want to say regulate, but either put a penalty if a project is done and the outlet was never approved or just registered, just to prevent something like this 40 years later of, now we've realized the drainage, the ditch was, or this enclosed pipe was designed for X amount of acres. Now, 40 years later, we got double that.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if it's a municipal drain, they're supposed to seek permission.
So is there a penalty if they don't seek permission?
We can subsequently do a 65 change to change the watershed and add that area in. Council can, the drainage board can.
Which then means that landowner is assessed just like any other landowner outletting into the drain, correct?
Correct, but the amount would change if the watershed, if the amount of, equivalent acres draining into the drain was more.
And I believe it's the same for a municipal ditch, isn't it? If they've outletted into a municipal ditch without the municipality's permission.
Red light.
Through you, Mr. Chair. If anyone decides to, without permission, enter onto a roadside or a city right-of-way to construct or outlet water, then they would be encroaching. And we have a current bylaw that prohibits that, and the individual can be charged under the Provincial Offences Act.
And I completely understand that, but going back to what last meeting we were talking about, to get Works Department to have discussions with us, some landowners just know that it's taking time, and Charlie kind of talked on this about timeliness, where some landowners just go, well, it's going to take me 6 months or whatever time they think, we're just going to go ahead and do it. So I think if go back to getting communication with maintenance, that could eliminate some of those issues.
Through you, Mr. Chair. And I think maybe in the past that's been a perception. So where in situations or current situations where a landowner needs to come to the municipality and their only outlet is a municipally owned property or a roadside ditch. So we have a current policy that addresses that. and that policy starts with the drainage superintendent. So I think we just get that out in the community, because that's where it starts, and the policy is with engineering. Once we have a proposal with the landowner, or the landowner brings a proposal forward, and we agree with it, then we bring on Public Works and review it with them. But then we can move through that current policy for outletting to roadside ditches.
Anything further? Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Seeing none at this point, would somebody like to move for adjournment? Charlie? Seconder, Mike? All in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.